Hey everyone, it's been a really good week of reading comic books. Damien here. Um, I read a huge amount of comic books really, which is weird because at the same time I couldn't seem to find time to make this review video. I've been trying for about 3 days to squeak out the time. Wife and daughter are finally out of the house at the moment. Um, so this of course is not all comics from this week. I also want to mention, some of you guys might remember I have this giant Gil Kane artist edition of Spiderman, and I bought it maybe even a year ago or 6 months ago, and finally did some reading in it. Before I just kind of page through and enjoy the art, but I just started from the first issue in here, which was I think 96. They don't include the covers, but anyway, which was an issue, 96 was an issue with the swinging 60s, I guess it was 1971 actually, Aunt Meg's going to see the movie, the Broadway play of Hair, and there are cats who have problems, who are tripped out on drugs and falling from buildings, and Spider-Man has to save them and stuff. But I really, really enjoyed it. If you're not happy with the current Spider-Man, go back to those late 60s, early 70s Spider-Mans. They're so good. You kind of have, they're very soap opera-ish, and you have to read them in context of the times, of course. And one thing I realized is I really, really enjoyed the art. I enjoyed the art better reading them than just looking at the art. There's something about having the words to go along with good art that make, at least for me, I'm just a word and art person. It makes me absorb it so much better. And and it reminded me, there were periods, I think, in the 80s and sometimes in the 90s where I would say to myself, most of the writing in comic books is not that good, but the art is really good. And I'd pick up writing by certain writers that I didn't like that much because I liked the art, but I would still read them because reading them slowed me down or somehow connected me to the art. And sometimes there's some modern comics, it seems like it's less bad now than maybe it was 5 or 6 or 8 years ago, that have very little words and all art. And it seems stupid, but I kind of like those. I like the rhythm of the words, even if it's not the greatest story, to slow me down and make me enjoy the art. I enjoyed almost everything I read this week. I'm still reading backlogs of things, so I'll kind of cover the stuff that I didn't like so much first. The biggest disappointment being Supergirl. I read 4 issues of Supergirl, if you count, I count this as an issue of Supergirl, which is the cyborg Superman taking over Action Comics, supposedly, but it's totally connected to this run of Supergirl. And I found it all so dull. I'm not even quite sure why. The art was pretty good. Given that I have so many good comics to read, I think I'm going to have to drop Supergirl. I have officially dropped it from my pull. I can always still pick it up when I go to the shop since I'm not a mail order person. I still have, after Cyborg Superman, I still have 2 more issues of Supergirl that I haven't read. And it's just hard to motivate myself to read those because of, so many other things to read. Some of these covers are really great, and the art's pretty good. And I don't read it and say, boy, this writer doesn't know how to write, but somehow it just doesn't involve me or interest me, and I just want them to hurry up and get over with the story. There's this long story about Cyborg Superman and how and Brainiac and this planet where they can kind of do anything out of your mind they can make reality. All interesting elements, but somehow doesn't gel that much, so I just wish it was 1 issue and then we could have moved on instead of 5 or 6 issues or whatever it is. Let's see. That's there's only one other book. There was a book this week that I got that I didn't like that much, and the rest I did enjoy reading. But before I mention that, I'll just mention another sort of back issue thing. For somewhere along the line, I picked up issue 21 and 22 of Green Lanterns because I knew Charles Soule was on it. And I've heard some people, specifically Mr. CDC AMP and Jana Comic Book Girl, and I'm sure some other people, mention how they really like Green Lanterns now. And I read these 2 issues and I really liked it. So when I was at my store today, I picked up, I think it was whatever the current issue is. I'm afraid that might be 26, either 25 or 26, so I'll be reading that soon. Green Lanterns, even more than the other Lantern things, is kind of abstract in the sense it's not too connected to our world. And Mr. CDC AMP said by adding in Guy Gardner that helps, and that does help. But there's also just something about Charles Soule where I just like the rhythms of his writing and the little things, just little details he does. Comic books written by him seem just kind of satisfying packages. Can't quite say why. So I added Red Lanterns to my pull, and I'll be trying that for a while. Hopefully it won't get too sucked up into cross event stories, because it seems like the Green Lanterns are always having event stories, so that makes me a bit nervous. Also catching up, so there was a current this week. Green Arrow 26 came out, beginning of a new story, but really the story is a continuation of the story that had been coming before. The new story is called The Outsiders War, but it's all been a build-up of learning about the Outsiders and the connections of Ollie's father to this group called the Outsiders, and these clans, each one having a mystic, shamanistic kind of totem of a weapon, like an arrow or a spear or a shield. So I maybe read too many in a row. I read from 21 to 26 this past week. The art is incredible. So you do have that thing that I was talking about of the words in the story give you a chance to really absorb the art. Sorrentino is, I suppose maybe he's a little bit like Jay Lee, but to me he feels like a pretty unique artist. And the colorist, Maeo, he's a hard name to say anyway. I once heard him interviewed, which is why I even have a clue as to how to say his name. I can't find the credits in this issue. There it is. Marcelo Maeo does a really nice job. He does a lot of the kind of coloring that fiddles with the art a bit, making things drop out, taking things that were probably drawn in black and putting them in other colors. But he does a really good job. There's just a lot of excitement generated for me by Sorrentino's art. And this is written by Jeff Lemire, who in some cases is my favorite, one of my favorite writers, as we'll see later in the review. But I'm kind of feeling like Lemire is not working on all cylinders in this particular. I'm still trying to show you some art that I really liked in this particular series. It's kind of like he's throwing a lot up at the wall and seeing what sticks, maybe. And there's a lot of plot elements that I don't really have faith are going to come together that well. There's gangsters in Seattle, which, that alone, the way he does the gangsters, and because I live in Portland, the next city over from Seattle, I don't kind of buy the particular groups of gangsters he's put in. Maybe they have a tradition in the old DC. There seem to be specific characters running these mobs. But, if I were to make up a comic book with gangsters in Seattle, well, I might have to research a little bit, but in this area, I would choose different groups. Like maybe I know the gangs from LA have sort of spread up the West Coast. So I might have something like that. I might have triads from the Asian influence on the West Coast here involved and stuff. But there seems to be an Irish gang who does the waterfront. I know I'm being too picky. It's comic books. So any one thing in here I wouldn't be thrown off, but there's just so many things that kind of make me kind of on. So I'm not sure whether I'm going to keep picking up Green Lantern. I love the art, so I might. Sorry, I said Green Lantern, Green Arrow. I really love the art, so I might continue to pick it up. It's not terrible plots or anything, but it just seems higgledy-piggledy. Another example is in one issue, Green Arrow says, well, I am completely broke. I'm bankrupt. The only money I have is my salary from the Justice League of America. And that might help me. That'll give us some money to work with. It's not too bad. And he kind of implies that with that salary, he can kind of support his two support people. And then in another issue, the guy, the mail tech guy, is forced to pay some of their bills because he's the only one with a job, and his job is delivering Chinese food. So he's a delivery man, and he's supposed to be supplying them with money. And in somewhere in all of that, they said, well, I'm just going to use arrows now because I can't afford all the trick high-tech arrows. And then in the next issue, they're using arrows that have EMP and satellite imaging and all this stuff, which is cool on its own. But this is just an example of kind of the all-over-the-place feel I get from this. And I'm not very invested. I mean, some people have read these great Green Arrow runs of the past and really love Green Arrow. I haven't read those ones. I read Green Arrow back in the early 80s, I think, and I read some of the classic Neil Adams Green Arrow in reprints somewhere. And other than that, I don't have a big connection to the Green Arrow. So I don't know if I'll stick with it. I feel kind of disinterested in the Outsider War, and I feel like it's going to take forever for all the answers to be given. I also have a problem with the kind of Green Arrow who works in the physical world, yet we have all this shamanistic stuff and going into trances and kind of drug-induced dreamscapes that it doesn't gel well for me. Again, that feeling of Jeff Lemire just throwing a ton of stuff up against the wall. And maybe all of that was in the older Green Lantern that I don't know about, and maybe it all made sense there. So I enjoyed reading them, but I was just not sure whether to stick with it, particularly because I just have so much to read. And also kind of in my backlog. Wow, I've gone on for 13 minutes already and haven't even got to the book, basically to the books of the week. Uncanny XMen. The Uncanny XMen and the All New XMen, which are kind of sister titles and go together, have all kind of dropped off a cliff for me since the War of the Atom, or during the War of the Atom. Because I thought in the first, couple of arcs, if you call them, although it's really all just one endless arc. First 10 issues of All New X-Men, I thought Bendis was brilliant. I thought, now I see why Brian Michael Bendis is this superstar. And now suddenly I just can't get into it anymore. I mean, this is a kind of clever issue. It's got pretty neat artwork. We got a mutant with this kind of subtle, half shape-changing, half emotion-changing power. But I'm just having trouble getting into it. But I can, it's again kind of that, I can enjoy the artwork and the story is decent. It's just in the bigger picture of having loved it so much before that I am less excited about Uncanny X-Men. I have a subscription to this, so I think I've still got like 6 issues to come anyway. So, maybe I'll call this by catching up video, and then I will do another video. I think last week I ended up doing this too, because I don't want to put out such long videos. So I'll come back and I'll cover the comics I read this week, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.